Do you think McLaren are doing the right thing there by letting their drivers fight like this?
You know when you're trying to get your mum and dad when you were kids to let you go out and play a little bit further from home? The McLaren drivers are proving that Daddy Zach is right to trust them to go out and play.
It's like when your parents say, look, you can go out drinking, here's some alcohol, but don't overdo it.
But if you're sick in my kitchen, I'll be
Yeah.
really disappointed. What McLaren are doing is going out, having a dance and having a drink and having a nice time, but they're not passing out in a pool of their own vomit in front of McDonald's on the high street.
With your pants around your ankles. Hello and welcome back to the Fast and the Curious. This is our Austrian Grand Prix debrief. Let's get straight into it. I'm Betty Glover alongside Christian Hewgill, who, by the way, texted me 23 seconds before lights out saying lap one was going to be absolute carnage. I don't think you expected it to be that carnage, Christian.
Well, I did, because you can so often get a good run up the hill. So actually, I think I as much as I like to big up my own Formula One knowledge, I mean, I don't really, that's not true. But I'm basically saying you don't need to be an expert to predict that. I don't think that was a bold prediction for me. It's often chaos in lap one in Austria.
But I think you thought it'd be more around Lando, didn't you? Whereas actually it was a bit further back.
Yeah, I didn't think for a moment, that's a great point. I didn't think for a moment Kimi Antonelli would strategically forget where the brake pedal was and destroy Max Verstappen in the biggest turn one cock up in many a long race. That was spectacular. Incoming!
It happens to the best of us. I've forgotten which one's the brake.
Not when you're an F1 driver.
Yeah, maybe. There were battles all over the place, though. Let's run you through how this one finished before we get into it. McLaren's first Red Bull win. McLaren's first win at the Red Bull Ring since 2001.
It's tricky, that, isn't it?
Well, it's a mouthful.
Win at the Red Bull Ring.
Red Bull Ring. If you say it quickly, that...
Win at the Red Bull Ring. Win at the Red Bull Ring. Anyway.
Lando Norris took first place. Oscar Piastri did everything to overtake him, but had to settle for second. Charles Leclerc took the final spot on the podium. Lewis Hamilton came fourth. George Russell fifth. RB's Liam Lawson took sixth. Fernando Alonso held on to seventh. And this is where you actually need to start clapping. Great day for Sauber, double points. Gabriel Bortoleto finished eighth. His first points as well. Brilliant. Nico Hulkenberg, 9th and 10th for Esteban Ocon. I mean, there's lots of clapping going on there because there's so many different storylines.
So many different storylines. And listen, a very enjoyable Grand Prix, an absolutely spectacular start, dipped a little bit in the middle. And at the end, I actually think we might have got a more spectacular fight were it not for Oscar getting, unfortunately, caught up in a bit of traffic, which we'll get into. But Austria always throws up a really good Grand Prix. The way the track flows, the way one section flows into another really nicely, it's really good for enabling racing to carry on through the lap. Plus, you can simply overtake. It's a little circuit, but it's wide. There's plenty of overtaking. And you just rarely get a bad Austrian Grand Prix. And we got the news today that it's been extended for ages. So we're going to be racing in Austria for ages and ages and ages, which is great news because it's an old classic track. It's got a great passionate Verstappen fan base with it obviously not being far from the Netherlands. And you get great racing. So, yeah, I always really enjoy the Austrian Grand Prix. And today was no exception.
Give me any track where you can overtake. I love it. But
Oh, sorry, I thought you were saying to me, like, Christian, give me... I was like, Bahrain, anywhere. Like, I thought you were just saying, where's a circuit you can overtake? What's this, 24? Right, okay.
Alphabetically, I want a list. No, but I was actually on social media, obviously, and so many people were going on about how it was a boring race. I was just thinking, what do you want?
It did dip a little bit in the middle, but it wasn't a boring race by any stretch of the imagination. No, those people, I think, were wrong.
One of the main reasons why I just don't feel like you can call that race boring, even if it did have a little dip, is because there was just some delightful wheel-to-wheel racing between those McLarens. This is what we've wanted. This is what we've been going on about for ages. This is what we wanted. Lando's obviously going to be very happy with that result, isn't he? Especially after what happened in Canada.
Yeah, listen, Lando didn't take part in free practice one, as McLaren put the rookie in. But from then on in, this was one of those races where when you're looking to tell the storyline of a race weekend, Lando looked quickest. But we've seen that in previous weekends where Lando has looked the quicker McLaren until it really matters in qualifying. And then he struggled to over one lap when you in Q3, in your final run, when you need to eke every last little bit out the car. That's where Lando struggled. And he's admitted that that's been because he's not always comfortable with this McLaren. And that's not been a problem previously in his career. But we saw in Monaco that not being a problem, where he had a supremely impressive qualifying and he went on to win the race. And it's not coincidence that he's won this race, because if you look in Canada, yes, Lando, of course, hit the back of Oscar and took himself out. And that was awful for Lando Norris. But the very reason he was able to do that was because his race pace was strong. He was right up there. The race has not been Lando's issue. Qualifying has. And qualifying, yes, okay, some people didn't get to do their last run because Gasly, wasn't it, brought out a yellow flag. Fine. But even with that, Lando's final qualifying lap, or final two qualifying laps actually, was sensational because he had a gap of something like 0.3 of a second before he then did that later one. So I think Lando won this race in qualifying partly because his qualifying was absolutely sensational, regardless of that yellow flag incident. 0.5 gap in qualifying around the Red Bull Ring is phenomenal. And then he kept cool under pressure in the race. So really impressive from Lando Norris this weekend. Exactly what he needed to do.
That's the thing that I think I was most impressed with, is that Oscar was breathing down his neck the entire way through, start to finish, and he kept his cool. Because if he'd made one little error, Oscar was there, he was ready to go, wasn't it?
You texted me early on in the Grand Prix and said this will be tasty, and I was just about to reply with, I'm not really worried about Lando, and then Oscar got past Lando, and I'm sort of thinking, it shows you how much I know. But I still wasn't, again, remember what I said about the Red Bull Ring, and it does flow and you can get past. There's plenty, even if you do get overtaken, all right, make sure you get a good exit from the part of the circuit you're in. Make sure you don't compromise yourself in the next part of the circuit, and you will be able to get past, which is exactly what Lando did. And it was Oscar who made the big mistake today, in that lockup where it looked like he was going to potentially take himself or Lando out. And he, bless Oscar, openly admitted, I took it a bit far. Yeah. It happens in the heat of battle. You're never going to do a 24-race season battling for a championship like Oscar and Lando are without a mistake. But I've said throughout these post-race debriefs, anyone who joins us for these debriefs a lot will have heard me say before, it's a long season and you are going to have weekends where Lando gets the advantage again. And this was one of those. And what really encouraged me was, I said in the Canada debrief, let's see how Lando responds to this. And I was really encouraged by, actually, after I'd finished talking to you, Betty, I went back into the circuit to collect all my stuff. And I'd heard some people who'd seen Lando leave in Canada, and they'd sort of said, no, he seemed fine. He sort of said, mistakes happen. He wasn't doing that thing we've seen him do before, where the end of the world's come and he's beat himself up. It was like, listen, it was a heated battle. Mistakes happen. I'm not going to be hard on myself. We go again. And he did that. And he got in the car in Austria. And that's growth, isn't it? That's fantastic. The way he's come into Austria, like, yeah, it's a new weekend. And he was the better McLaren. And he did brilliantly in qualifying. I wasn't worried about him in the race. Oscar looked racy. But as I said at the start of the podcast, we've seen so much that the race pace between them is so damn similar. We've seen,
so close.
Yeah, when one has been ahead in one particular race, the other's been breathing down their neck, and vice versa. This was the case again. So I just think this was supremely impressive by Lando Norris, and proves why he won't. I don't think this will be an Oscar walkover for the championship, like many people have said. And it was encouraging that Lando said in qualifying, it feels like the old me again. Has something just clicked a little bit, where Lando all of a sudden finally feels more comfortable with this car? Has one of the upgrades McLaren have bought just made it a bit more easy to click into place over one lap for Lando? Who knows? We'll see as the season goes on. But I've been so impressed with basically, as soon as Lando got out the car from that Canada mistake, I've been so impressed with him. Yeah, my fault. We move on. Here we go into Austria. Nailed it. Really well done, Lando Norris.
But as a professional sportsman, that's when you show your class
when you earn your money,
and show your. That's where, yeah, exactly. That's when you earn your money. Because if you make a mistake like that, or the pressure's starting to get onto you, you have got to stand up. It is, yeah. I'm really impressed with him. I'm really glad that we've got that result, because now there's only 15 points between Oscar and Lando. Just 15 points.
Which is nothing.
That's nothing. So anyone saying that this is going to be Oscar walking it, you are lying, because that is not a comfortable lead.
No, it's not a comfortable lead at all. With 25 points for a win. I completely agree with you, Betty. And if you look at, you could have a bad race and finish fifth, and that gets you 10 points. And if, the winner wins the race, that's a 10-point swing. You only need to knock down a few positions with something going wrong, and someone else wins the race, and all of a sudden that size of gap is eroded. So no, I completely agree with you, and I just think some of Lando's sort of naysayers almost this year have almost been over-exaggerating, I think, the demise of Lando Norris this year, because it hasn't really been the case. It's just been qualifying. And we've seen now Monaco. I'm right in thinking Monaco was his last win, wasn't it? Am I making that up?
So.
No, yeah, Monaco was his last win. Yeah, he then finished second in Spain and obviously retired in Canada at the end of the race. But, they're the two weekends where he's looked good in qualifying. And, of course, how many times have we said with Lewis Hamilton, for example, who struggled with qualifying, you give yourself so much more to do in the race. It's not coincidence. It's obvious stuff. Nail that qualifying. You're going to give yourself an easy challenge in the race. So, brilliance from Lando in terms of every area. Came into practice, nailed it. Qualifying, nailed it where it really mattered, and then some. And then absorbed that pressure from Oscar, who went, guess what? I'm going to throw everything at you. McLaren let Oscar throw everything at him, and Lando still came out on top. Massively impressive from Lando Norris.
Do you think McLaren are doing the right thing there by letting their drivers fight like this?
Well, this came up in Canada. A lot of people ask this in Canada, why are McLaren letting them race? Because the simple fact is, we are less than halfway through the season. I think, if I'm right in saying, Silverstone is round 12. So, yeah, we go past the halfway point after Silverstone. And as you said, Betty, it's sort of gone quick, but also F175 launch event at the O2 feels like 6 years ago.
Yeah, that does,
actually. But, yeah, we're not at the halfway point, and there is only that 15-point gap. And then, the reason I think McLaren are doing the right thing is, we're in an era of Formula One where we're going into what could be a very tight new era, where I expect the Mercedes cars will possibly be fighting their own world championship. And I mean the Mercedes engine-powered cars in the early part of the regulations. Now, why should you let these drivers race? Well, number one, this season, I don't think anyone's going to touch them anyway. We'll talk about Max in a bit, but the Max challenge is fading. Ferrari and Mercedes may well win odd races, but they're not championship contenders. So is a McLaren going to win the championship anyway? Yes, he might as well let them race. And the reason why he might as well let them race is, aren't we seeing with Red Bull why having two drivers who can fight for a world championship is bloody important? In Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, McLaren have got a fantastic driver lineup. Two drivers capable of winning Grand Prix, two drivers capable of winning World Championship, two drivers mature enough to get on well with each other so you don't have a Hamilton-Rosberg situation. They've got a good inter-team equilibrium. And by letting these drivers race for as long as they possibly can, you're keeping these together. You're keeping two of your prized assets. You're playing a long-term game to keep both drivers happy, rather than just going, well, actually, Oscar's got a 20-point gap at this point, so we're going to just back Oscar so that Lando then leaves.
And Lando would just leave then, wouldn't he?
And Lando would just leave. I think also, A, it's the right decision for the long-term future of the team. B, it's good for business. It's good for the sport. Thank you, McLaren, for doing this, because we need it, we all want to go into racing for the right reasons. So huge credit to Zach Brown, huge credit to the McLaren team for going, no, we're racers. We want to let our drivers race. It's good for us watching. It's good for the sport. It's good for the wider thing. So I think McLaren are doing the right thing. Unless if Max was 3 points behind, it might be a different battle. If the gap between one of the two cars was bigger, at some point they might have to prioritise. But at the moment, I think they're doing the right thing.
I think it's also the right thing for the drivers as well, in terms of, yes, obviously, if you're prioritising one of them, the other one will probably get annoyed and then leave the team. But also in terms of their experience and getting better. And this is only going to be good for both the drivers and the team.
Yeah, and they are proving that, when you're trying to get your mum and dad when you were kids to let you go out and play a little bit further from home. And you say to them, look, I'm going to, and your mum and dad give you that thing of, well, if I'm going to trust, you've got to earn this trust. And therefore you don't take the mickey and you don't come back with a cut head if you're going to play too far away from home. Do you see where I'm going with this? The McLaren drivers, it's not my best analogy, it's not my worst. The McLaren drivers are proving that Daddy Zach is right to trust them to go out and play. That's what I'm saying. Because they're behaving largely. All right, Lando's mistake in Canada, Oscar locked up today. There hasn't been a big Verstappen-Ricardo smash. There hasn't been a big Hamilton-Rosberg
God, it could have been
smash.
so much worse.
At the moment, they are earning Daddy Zach and Daddy Stella's trust.
It's like when your parents say, look, you can go out drinking, here's some alcohol, but don't overdo it.
But if you're sick in my kitchen, I'll be really disappointed. That is that's better than mine, definitely.
If I get a call saying that you're passed out in the middle of the road because you've drunk a whole bottle of straight Pimm's, then that's it.
What McLaren are doing is going out, having a dance and having a drink and having a nice time, but they're not passing out in a pool of their own vomit in front of McDonald's on the high street.
Exactly. So, Lando and Oscar, well done, responsible drinking. We're here for it.
You don't get that on Sky, do you?
No, you don't get that on Sky.
And we should say, sorry, drink responsibly.
Well, obviously. Goes without saying, Christian. Don't end up passed out outside McDonald's with your pants around your ankles. Do you think cola...
Giving you an insight into the weekends of Betty Glover there.
That actually never happened to me. Can I just say that? Just to clarify. I never did that. I've done some questionable things when I was younger, but that didn't happen to me.
Pants always stayed on. And for that, we're
My
grateful.
pants have always stayed on. Oh, Jesus. God. Moving on. Franco Colapinto.
Franco Colapinto, yes. Come on, Formula One podcast.
Do you think that move on Piastri had a big impact on Piastri's finish? Do you think if Franco Colapinto hadn't have done that, Piastri could have possibly had a slightly better finish, maybe even overtaken Lando?
Yeah, it didn't help, did it? I mean, none of us are ever going to be able to sit here and go, yes, Oscar would have been able to get past. But unfortunately, yes, it could well have done. We'll never know the answer. But Austria is one of those tracks where if you're a strategist at a team, if you're a race engineer with a team, that sort of thing is going to have a big impact in Austria because it's a small circuit, it's a short lap, and therefore you lap more cars more frequently. So if you are giving a driver a job to do in overtaking, lapped cars are going to have a big impact on that, more so than a longer race like a Spa or a Silverstone. Does that make sense as to why? Because the track is condensed.
Yeah.
So, yes, but also, this goes back to you make your own luck. You qualify in first, you get yourself track position so you don't run into these problems. So, yes, unfortunately for Oscar, and it's again, when you text me, Betty, and said people were saying McLaren screwed Oscar over with strategy. They didn't. This is unfortunately...
No, I didn't say that.
No, you text me and said... No, I said you text me and said people had been saying that on social media. Yeah, of course. No, they didn't. That's what happens when you are, unfortunately, the car behind. It's really hard to unpit come out of the pits into clear traffic. It is the unfortunate thing of being the chaser rather than being out in front when you're at a track like Austria.
And that was why Oscar was so keen to try and overtake before that first pit stop, because then he'd get to pit first, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, yes. Again, you teams will normally give advantage to the driver in first. So if Oscar had made a move stick and was out in front, he'd have probably had priority. But he couldn't make that happen, and therefore you risk things like the Colapinto situation happening. That was unfortunate. Franco should have been more aware of his surroundings there, and he needs to remember that when you are battling at a place like Austria and you're not in the leading cars, lapped cars are going to be coming. He needs to be more aware of that as a driver. And, I mean, we don't hear everything. It might be that his race engineer did give him the hints and did tell him the information, but we don't know. The race engineer should have been on the radio and saying, yes, okay, we know you're in a scrap here, but you've got the leaders coming. Be really careful.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break. When we're back, we've got more F1 to talk about. Christian, pull your pants up! Welcome back to the Fast and the Curious with Betty Glover and Christian Hewgill. Christian, I feel like we need to talk about Red Bull, shall we? Because you made a really valid point earlier about the fact that, about the fact that they've literally got one solid driver in Max Verstappen, and that second car, and I know we've talked about this so much, but that second car just isn't good enough. It's not a competitive second car. Surely they cannot go on like this.
I didn't feel it was being talked about enough in Canada. So, and I mentioned it in the Canada debrief. Yuki there finished 12th, and again out the points. He finished 13th in Spain. He finished 17th in Monaco. He's only picked, it's just, he doesn't often look like he's going to score points in that Red Bull. So I actually didn't think it was being talked about enough. And then when Liam Lawson had his brilliant qualifying yesterday, on Saturday, I just thought to myself, well, two things here. A, the best thing that could have happened for Liam Lawson's long-term career is being, in inverted commas, demoted. Because, is it a demotion? Because Yuki is showing exactly what Checo showed, that, that car is difficult to drive. I still do think Red Bull were right to move Checo on over the winter. I still think a driver of Checo's experience, having been in that car for such a long period of time, should have been performing better. But Lawson and Tsunoda have proved they are two good racing drivers, and Yuki isn't getting on any better than Liam, really. There was a mild improvement at first, but Yuki's a more experienced Formula One driver. And Liam, don't forget, Liam missed out on a winter of driving that RB, of simulator runs, of pre-season testing. So I think only now are we actually seeing Liam get back up to his full potential in that RB. And Yuki's just nowhere. Now, I'm not blaming Yuki for this. The whole point I'm raising here is what Red Bull have won Constructors' Championships because they were by far the dominant car. And they had drivers like Checo, who I remember there was a Baku race. I can't remember exactly what race off the top of my head, but where Max got taken out and Checo picked up the win. In the past, they've had Daniel Ricciardo who can win races. They've had Checo who can win races. There was even times when, Alex Albon was in the hunt for podiums when he was in that car. Gasly was in the hunt for points. It's now got so much worse. So, and even when they were struggling more with the second car, they had such an advantage that they could afford to just have Verstappen, because Verstappen could win the Constructors' Championship on his own. I can't see, with Red Bull having a new engine supplier in 2026 and beyond in Ford, and Red Bull powertrains Ford, however that works, I can't see another situation for a long time where they're going to be that dominant. They need to get this second car more drivable, because clearly it's not a driver issue, because they've had 157 drivers in that seat over the last few years. So, what they need to really dig into what's gone wrong there. Have they developed a car that is perfect for Max Verstappen and his unique driving style, and therefore made it impossible for others to drive? Because the thing is, we can all speculate, but none of us really know exactly how they've got themselves into this mess.
And if that's the case, though, then they need to be getting a second driver that has Max's driving style.
Well, no one really does. That's the issue. Alex Albon's talked about this, that Max's driving style is so extreme and so unique. Or do they need to be saying to Max, we need to not just make it suited to your driving style, and we need to make a more drivable car, because so much has been made of the RB that it's actually quite not a simple car to drive, but an easier car to handle, less of a diva, a more behaved, balanced car. Because for two reasons: A, they're not going to win another Constructors' Championship with one car, because I don't think they're going to be in that position of dominance again. And B, and we need to talk about this, we're back into a situation we were last season when Hamilton announced he was leaving Mercedes, that Red Bull and Max and Mercedes are flirting with each other massively again. So if all of a sudden Red Bull are left without Max, they need a plan B here because, let's be honest,
Oh, God, they're going to be screwed, aren't they?
every sod else has left Red Bull other than Christian Horner and Max Verstappen. So if Max goes, have you got an undrivable car with two people who potentially can't drive it? And this race where Max gets, through no fault of his own, Kimi made a mistake. Kimi acknowledged his mistake. He'll learn from that. But Max gets taken out, and Red Bull are not only not scoring a point, they're nowhere. And this race highlights that. It's a big job that Red Bull have got to do here because that can't carry on if they're going to win another Constructors' Championship anytime soon.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with Yuki Tsunoda because if they get rid of him as well, you're thinking, Jesus, guys, come on. Like, you've got to help your second driver at some point. You've got to invest in them. What is happening, though, between Mercedes and Max Verstappen, and what do you make of it from a Mercedes standpoint? Because Toto Wolff is answering those questions when he gets asked, are you interested in Max? He is answering. He's skirting around it a little bit, but he is answering it. He's saying you'd be stupid not to look at him.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating for so many reasons. You've got George Russell proving that he is an excellent Formula One driver and able to lead the team.
And a kind man as well. Did you hear him just after the formation lap when he was saying, make sure everyone's got water, all the engineers, make sure they've got water. Lovely man, George.
Oh,
Lovely man.
He's a good boy. But he's stepped up. He's done well this year. You know, he's proving a valid team leader. But I think you've got the levels of Formula One driver where you've got these drivers capable of winning and winning races, winning world championships, your Oscar Piastris, your Lando Norrises, your George Russells, your Charles Leclerc. But arguably speaking, Max is operating a step above those drivers. Max is one step higher. Max is capable of eking out a few tenths more than probably anyone. But so therefore, Mercedes would be silly not to consider Max Verstappen. And as Toto says, very interestingly in the pen, I think it was on Friday, whenever it was, where he said, we're not just scoping about for next year, but long term. You know, long term, where's Max looking? So yes, Mercedes would be silly not to at least look at the possibility. I agree. But then you've also got the flip side to that is, are you risking, again, I could be completely wrong with this, but are you risking developing a car that is built around Max Verstappen and making a car very difficult to drive like Red Bull have? Are you risking an inter-team dynamic that doesn't quite work if it's Verstappen and Russell? I think as much as you're getting a hugely fast racing driver, there are also risks that come with employing Max. It's interesting. But then again, if you have got a really tight championship in 2026 and beyond, is Max Verstappen going to give you that little bit more than George Russell? Quite possibly. It's fascinating.
But then also talking about it so openly isn't going to do a lot for your team morale of the drivers that you've currently got.
Well, he's not been given any choice because George Russell is saying, listen, I obviously want to sign a new contract. And if you're George Russell, the only other team that you consider going to if you're George Russell is McLaren. There's no vacancy opening up there anytime soon for all the reasons we were discussing earlier in the podcast. You're not going to want to go to Red Bull because I don't see any evidence that they're going to be in a better position in the 2026 rule changes. You're going to want Mercedes. Everybody thinks have got the advantage power unit wise. I think you'll see Mercedes right up there. So George obviously wants to keep that seat. And then people are therefore saying, you've won Grand Prix, George. You've stepped up team leader. Why aren't you signing a new contract? He's left with no real option but to go. Well, yeah, you tell me. They're obviously looking at Max because I'm ready. So
Also, what makes this extra spicy, Christian, is that George Russell and Max don't overly get on either.
Yeah, which is fascinating. So it is all really fascinating. And actually, it's one of those, Betty, where obviously people like me who give opinions on Formula One, I can't sit here and say this is the obvious answer to this one. I can't sit here and say this is what Mercedes should do. I think it's a really tricky balance. That balance between you've got more experienced driver, rookie who's developing nicely. That is a really nice balance to have. Driver who probably is capable of winning a world championship in George Russell, but then also this superhuman talent of Max Verstappen in his prime, like when Hamilton was, who could maybe give you a couple more tenths than George. It's a really interesting conundrum, and because I would be surprised if Max's long-term future is at Red Bull. I just don't see really any evidence that they're going to be able to sort this out and be long-term. I'm just not seeing the evidence. Now, they might surprise me, but I'm just not long-term seeing the evidence that they're going to pass McLaren. So if you're Max, you are going to be open to a move. So I just think it's fascinating.
And it's been a bit it's getting a bit awkward with Max Verstappen and Red Bull. Like they're starting to clash a little bit on like certain things. You can sort of see that I don't know, like gap. What's the word that I'm looking
Crack
for?
starting to develop, maybe.
That's it. That's the one.
Because also, we know Max is so close to his dad, Jos Verstappen. We know Jos Verstappen and Christian Horner don't get on. We know the death of Red Bull's owner, Dietrich Mateschitz, has changed the dynamic within the team. We know there's a lot of politics and power plays that goes on within that team. We know that Helmut Marko is very close to Max. There's lots of complicated elements in that relationship. And those cracks would be papered over if Red Bull were giving Max a car that was capable of winning the World Championship. Well, now they're not. So inevitably, it's going to be fascinating to keep an eye on that one. And it's a really difficult decision for Toto Wolff because it's not a straightforward one for me.
2 questions that I've got. Do you think Mercedes could afford Max's contract?
Yes.
You do think that would be
I don't think money's
easy?
an issue for them.
And my second question is, we talk a lot about how Red Bull have made this car around Max Verstappen and like it's so fitted to him. If he was, it would be so interesting, wouldn't it, to see him get in this Mercedes car now and just see what he could do in it. It'd be fascinating.
Yeah, it would. None of us know the answer. None of us know, is this Red Bull... I mean, obviously, we've heard from people like Albon that it does... It's not like Red Bull have deliberately gone out and said... It's not as cut and paste as some people make out that Red Bull have gone, we're making this car for Max... But when you've got the only consistent in that team has been Max and you're responding to his feedback, inevitably there's an element of that.
Yeah, it's going to naturally mould to him, especially if he's giving loads of feedback as well, which apparently he does.
So it's not easy for Toto Wolff. And it's funny, the obvious quickest car at the moment is McLaren, and their drivers are going to be locked in. And this is another reason why the 2026 rule changes are fascinating, because the only real hints we've got as to performance is we think that the Mercedes power units are going to be good. So that gives the advantage to the likes of McLaren, to the likes of Aston Martin. Aston Martin are moving to Honda. So to the likes of Williams is what I meant to say, sorry. Alpine are moving to a Mercedes power unit, to Mercedes themselves, obviously, to McLaren. So it's just fascinating. It's really fascinating.
What is also fascinating is Sauber and their speed this weekend. Where has that come from? Commentary going, that Sauber is quick, was not what I was expecting to hear. Double points as well. Put into context how good that is for Sauber.
It's really good considering how far they've come and what almost turmoil the team's been through in recent years, where they put in a new management structure to take that team away from Alfa Romeo into its sort of wilderness awkward middle period of Sauber while they're waiting for Audi to take it over. And they not only looked like the slowest car, but they looked like the slowest car by some distance. And it looked a bit of a mess at times. And then there was lots of changes, and Mattia Binotto's been brought in, the ex-Ferrari team principal, and Jonathan Wheatley's been brought in, who was previously at Red Bull. And again, Williams, bless them, had a very difficult weekend. Clearly had pace to be in the points with Alex.
Couldn't have gone worse, really.
No, but tricky for Carlos in that he needs to. He looked like he was really finding his way in that Williams, and now it's sort of the last few Grand Prix gone off the rails a bit. They need to work out what's gone wrong there. But generally speaking, as we spoke about with James Vowles on the last episode of the podcast, we've been very impressed by the fact that Williams have made a step forward from last season. Well, what you've now seen is Sauber doing the same. So, very impressive from Sauber as a team who've clearly found some pace in that car, and clearly Mattia Binotto and Jonathan Wheatley. And I spoke to Jonathan Wheatley for the first time in Canada. I had quite a long conversation with him and just very impressed by him as a team principal. A James Vowles-esque appointment there. They had different roles in their previous teams, but when you look at the pool of talent who aren't team principals in Formula One, and you look at someone like Jonathan Wheatley, it's another one like James Vowles where you go, yes, as a character, it makes sense that you're a team principal. So I've been very impressed with the way that Binotto and Wheatley seem to have put Sauber back on the right track. So that's really impressive. And then their drivers have been so impressive. Nico Hülkenberg has been phenomenal all season. Nico Hülkenberg was phenomenal last season. Nico Hülkenberg is a vastly underrated Formula One driver who is more than capable of winning Grand Prix, but has never found himself in the right car. And I think that's a real shame. So Nico, a rare mistake in qualifying. There was a bit of a lock-up and battled back to finish. He finished P10 today, didn't he? Am I right? I think P9. Battled back to P9. Fantastic from Nico. And finally, the weekend where Gabriel Bortoleto showed don't forget, the Formula 2 champion, very highly rated, has shown flashes of speed this year, but not really had a weekend where he's put everything together. This was that weekend. And Sky, Bernie Collins and Ted Kravitz were saying on the grid on Sky that actually there was pressure on Bortoleto because he's qualified so well, because Hülkenberg has been proving you can score points in that car, that actually there was pressure on Bortoleto in this race. All right, mate, you've stuck it in a good position on a Saturday, but the points are handed out on Sunday. Go and bring home some points. And he did. Really impressively from Gabriel Bortoleto. His first points, P8, a P8 and P9 for Sauber. Just really impressive all round. And while we're talking about that as well, how many times has Esteban Ocon this year dragged his Haas and picked up some points for Haas as well, proving what a good signing he's been for Haas, and Ollie Bearman not far behind him as well. So a solid weekend for Haas as well, and Ocon continues to impress me. So well done, both of those teams.
Good point about Ocon, actually, because he does go under my radar quite often. Like I didn't really think about him earlier, but yeah, brilliant that he's managed to do that.
Yeah, he so often quietly and effectively works his way up in Grand Prix. I mean, if you look at, a 9th in Canada, a 7th in Monaco, he was 8th in Bahrain. He's very often this season just crept up the running order from his qualifying position. Ollie's developing nicely as well. Another very solid driver lineup at Haas who are doing great. So yeah, but particularly with Sauber, so impressed by them this weekend.
One of my favourite moments from this Grand Prix was Bortoleto trying to overtake Fernando Alonso, who was obviously his manager. And it just made me laugh so much because I think I can imagine that Fernando really enjoyed that moment. Do you know what I mean? I can imagine he was like, yeah, go on.
Fernando's really battled back well after a tricky start to the year. He had a lot of bad luck and is proving, Lance obviously just nowhere near again today. It's pretty much, Lance scored points early on in the season and seems to have actually a very good start to the season and then has dropped off. So Fernando did well again today. But yeah, lovely little moment. And I believe there was a nice little moment after the race as well where they acknowledged each other, Fernando and Bortoleto. So lovely stuff.
Yeah. Fernando went straight over to Bortoleto and was like, well done. I just think the type of person Fernando Alonso is, I can imagine him just seeing Bortoleto's trying to overtake him and he's just enjoying that moment. I just think it's brilliant. Radio Radar was pretty good this weekend, Christian. You really like Verstappen and what he said in qualifying.
My first contribution, really, I normally leave this to you, but I loved in qualifying where he came back after, I might have this wrong, but I think it was his penultimate Q3 run. And he just went, the car's tricky in low speed, the car's tricky in medium speed, and the car's tricky in high speed. Oh, right, good. Other than that, Max, it's all fine then, is it? Other than that, it's all fine. So I enjoyed that.
Is it ever not tricky, Max?
Yeah, exactly.
It's absolute struggle city. My favourite one was Charles Leclerc. He gets asked something, I can't remember what it was, and he went, "That's what I'm doing, Brian. That's what I'm doing." And for some reason, it really reminded me of Family Guy. Did you get that?
I thought exactly the same. And
That's what I'm doing, Brian.
It's somehow funnier. And there was I can't remember which race it was, but you weren't here and we had Bella James on.
Oh, yeah.
And me and Bella were saying it's somehow just a bit funnier because of the name Brian. So in that Grand Prix, Charles had done a really good overtake and Brian came on the radio and said, well done. And Charles went, thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
And it's just funny, isn't it? That's what I'm trying to do, Brian. It just... The name Brian makes it funnier, and Charles' sort of deadpan delivery. It's just spectacular. Thank you, Brian.
But there's also something really funny about when someone uses your name in a sentence.
There is.
There's something that sometimes is a little bit insulting about it, even though they don't mean it to be insulting. It's like if you were to go, "Very well done, Betty." I'm not. Do you know what? Do you know where I'm getting at?
Yeah,
like when
I do.
someone brings your name into it, it's really weird.
Yes, thank you, Betty.
Thank you, Betty. Whereas you'd just be like, yeah, thanks.
That's what I'm trying to do, Betty.
Yeah. That's what I'm doing, Brian. That's what I'm doing.
So fun. And also there was more, even though that relationship between Lewis and his race engineer does seem to be improving, there was still... They somehow, at least once a race, seemed to have some awkwardness that Lewis and Bono never had, did they? The whole, well, I don't want a box.
Oh, this was brilliant. Yeah. Can I extend? I don't want a box. Box. I don't want a box.
Do you know when your parents are rowing and they're both, you can see as the kid in the situation, you're being the adult, and you can see that both of them have got their sort of like horns up. They're both being snappy with each other. It sort of feels like that, doesn't it? It's sort of a bit, you're clearly annoyed with each other, and therefore you're just barbing at each other a little bit too much. It's like,
Do you know what though? Like the other day, my partner told me to empty the dishwasher, but I was doing something, like I was working at the time, and I just get really snappy back, and I'm like, yeah, in a minute, because I'm concentrating on working. Now, I can't imagine what it must be like if you're driving a Formula One car and someone's asking you to do something.
Yeah, that's it. I'm like that. Like, poor David came in at one point during the race, and David's a naturally very inquisitive person, my partner, and he was asking questions. I'm really trying to listen to something Karun and Harry are saying on commentary. I'm like, David, I can't. And I know I'm sounding a bit grumpy, but I'm like, I can't explain the whole race to you. I'm just trying to understand this. Like, and I'm sounding grumpy, but like, basically I'm saying, shut up and let me listen. I'll talk to you about it later.
But also, there is like F1 watching etiquette. And some people, you, like to watch your Formula One race and you like to not speak to anybody. You don't want to engage. You just want to watch and concentrate.
Which I have to admit, yes, you're exactly right. But part of it is this podcast that I know that 30 minutes after the race, I have to come on and I have to understand it because you'll be asking me what happened here. So I am therefore not a particularly pleasant person to be around when the Grand Prix is on, because if I don't understand something and I'm working, my brain's ticking over something like, well, why did that? I need to come into this podcast having understood it all. So therefore, when my amazing boyfriend, who I love dearly, but he's a very enthusiastic man, bounds in asking question after question after question, it's like, okay, not now. Because you know what he's like, Betty. He's a bundle of energy, and it's like,
yes, he's like a Labrador.
He's like
a golden retriever,
and it's like, okay, yeah.
But a lot of people have that with Formula One anyway. Like
they
just have to concentrate. And actually, it's like an ADHD person's dream, because there's like 1,000,001 things going on in Formula One, isn't there? And you've got to concentrate, because if it's not just a race, but you've got to think about a million other different things that are happening. But I like to text you throughout the race, don't I? So, and you don't like that because you never.
No, I don't mind it. I had to say to you today, sometimes because I watch via Sky Go. Sometimes my stream on the internet is a bit behind you.
Yeah. So I was just spoiling it.
So there was one moment where I just saw like, oh my God, Albon or something, Paul Williams, and you'd said, and I was like, what happened? And then 2 minutes later, Ted Kravitz goes, yeah, Williams have retired Albon. I'm like, oh, for God's sake, Betty. So yeah, I was just like, don't text me any more spoilers. But actually, I do quite like chatting to you during the Grand Prix, which says a lot about our friendship, because I don't like talking to most people.
Do you know what? I'm honoured, but also good thing, because we do have a Formula One podcast. So.
Yes, famously have to talk to each other after.
We do have to discuss it. Thank you so much to everyone for listening. We have got a ridiculously busy week coming up. We're treating you to three whole episodes, because it is Silverstone week.
Yeah, Silverstone week. So we are, for those who missed last week and have missed our social media announcements, on Wednesday,
how dare you,
which is, of course, the 2nd of July, we are at the Williams Fan Zone, teaming up with Williams to bring you a special episode of The Fast and the Curious recorded at the Fan Zone, which is at Piccadilly Circus. The doors open at 10 a.m. and we start talking to Jenson and James at midday, and then later on Alex Albon is on. So that is Wednesday at Piccadilly Circus at the Williams Fan Zone. All the information on that is on the Williams website. Just search Williams Fan Zone. And then on Thursday, we are on the main stage of the British Grand Prix. Me, Betty and Greg with Ollie Bearman, who is a wonderful man. I'll be so looking forward to that. That is on Thursday. The main.
Saw his dad today, by the way.
What you did? Was he just in town? Was he? Or did you see him on the telly?
No, on the telly.
On the telly, right? That would have been a turn up for the books, wouldn't it?
I didn't see him in my local.
No, that's what it sounded like. I saw him today. Yeah, he was in Costa. Yeah, picking up a latte. But yeah, 4:30 on the main stage on Thursday at the British Grand Prix. And we should also remind you, thank you, massive response to the merch. Thank you.
Yeah.
Huge response to the merch. Fastandthecurious.myshopify.com. If you order by close of play Sunday, so you might be listening to this Sunday night, so you need to get a shift on. We are hoping it'll be with you before Silverstone. We can't guarantee because we're not doing the postage, it's the Royal Mail. We're only a podcast. We haven't got our own postage service, so do bear with us.
Well, I feel like you do need an extra job, so...
Yeah, I'll just run a postal service. We're also aware that postage is expensive if you are not in the UK. We're aware of it. We are going to work on methods of bringing that down long term. As we said on the last episode, this is our first foray into merch. This is a trial run. This is our first little batch of merch. It's limited supply, but we'll be adding to it. We'll be developing it. We'll be bringing in new lines. And we've heard your feedback about wanting pink stuff. I think more pink has been some of the feedback, Betty. All very good. We're on it. More merch will come throughout the season.
Guys, go get yourself some mugs. They're cool. Go drink your coffee and your tea out of it whilst you listen to the episode.
So I've got one of the hoodies, which I got as a they sent me it and said, is this okay? The hoodies are brilliant.
I've got two.
Oh, look at you.
I know.
They're so comfy. I love the hoodies. Obviously not quite hoodie weather in the UK at the moment. But I said this on social, before it went live, the guy sent me the link for that. Do you want to check it's working? So I was like, yeah, fine. I bought a mug and a T-shirt, just check it's working. So I bought my own podcast merch.
Love a mug.
So yeah, I've got one of them on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see behind me, they've got one of them, but I've got another one on the way, so that's nice.
Well, on that note, we will see you later. Goodbye, everyone.
See you in the week.
Thank you for listening.
Bye.